It's Caleb and welcome to the hashtag Hooties podcast. Brooke, we have the epitome of happiness and optimism on the podcast today. For those that don't know Sarah Davidson, run us through all about her.
Yes, so today on the podcast we have the oh-so-fun Sarah Davidson, who is also known as Spoonful of Sarah online. Sarah is an entrepreneur who left the corporate world to follow her dreams, stepping away from being a lawyer to living her best life, even partying with the Hemsworths. She is the owner of Matcha Maiden and Matcha Mylk Bar, as well as being an author and podcaster. She's all about helping people find their happiest selves and how to seize their yays. So welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It's always so nice when someone else reads your bio. I feel like it sounds so much more fancy.
It's a bit of an ego boost, hey?
We have such an interesting...
Wow.
No, we're super pumped to have you on today, Sarah. Brooke was saying just before the podcast, we're talking behind the scenes, you're saying, you have such a lovely, soothing voice, Sarah. And then here I am next to Brooke, who also does radio work, and then I'm here with this gravelly, rough voice. So it's like two angelic voices and someone who sounds like he got hit by a bus. But we're going to have a lovely podcast today.
All right, so we'll get into your story in a second. But can you first tell us, how did you become good mates with the Hemsworths? That is just crazy.
I feel like that should go on my LinkedIn. It's like one of my main achievements in life.
Yes, it is.
I'm kind of like a T-grade celebrity just by association.
T-grade?
T-grade.
Is that because you have matcha tea?
I like that. That was good.
Ooh, I'm going to say yes. Let's pretend that was what I did it on purpose.
You just made your joke so much even better, a new level.
I know. So we met them through our cafe, Matcha Mylk Bar. Their parents, Craig and Leonie, had been living in St Kilda opposite our now business partner's first venue, and they'd gotten to know each other, right back since the Phillip Island days when they kind of lived there, but they also had an apartment in St Kilda. And then when our cafe opened, by that time, Liam and Miley were together. And as you guys probably know, Miley is vegan, or was vegan. I think she might not actually be vegan anymore, but she was a diehard vegan at the time. The family got really into plant-based eating and were kind of struggling with the gap in the market that we thought that we were closing, really cool plant-based food that wasn't preachy or overwhelming and that still tasted really good and that was really nutritious as well, and not just all cashews. So they came into...
I mean, you got to love some lectins and oxalates.
Absolutely. They came into the cafe every time they'd come back for the grand final and could eat everything and would leave full, and got so excited about this concept that they wanted to take it to the States. And then in the process of sort of that, we didn't end up going ahead, but chatting about the possibility, they were like, I think we should probably meet, they said to our business partner, I think we should meet your business partners. And we were like, oh yeah, I mean, we definitely should meet. I think that's really important. And so they invited us to their New Year's party at Chris's house in Byron one year, because they all happened to be in Australia at the same time. And that was the time that they would be together. And so we were like, yeah, let me check my schedule. I think I can make it to your New Year's party.
I might be able to squeeze you in somewhere, Chris. I'm not sure.
Yeah, let me see if I can make some time. And they were just so lovely. I know everyone says that, but they really are just so genuine, and you can see that they are just Phillip Island boys who have done incredibly well but still have such a good head on their shoulders, and family comes first, and they're just really, really lovely. You expect them to sort of have this golden glow around them or something, but they're just normal guys who hang out with their best friends from school and their family. And although one thing happened the next morning, I think we all slept in our cars in their front yard or something, and then we went back inside just to say goodbye. And Chris was really hungover, like a total normal person, on the couch under a blankie with Vegemite on toast, watching dodgeball. I remember it so clearly. I was like, "Oh, you're really normal. That's what we all do when we're hungover." And we went to say bye, and he stood up and I don't know whether time slowed down or something, but the blanket fell off him, and he was just wearing shorts, and so it fell off in this kind of capey way as he stood up to like his 6'1" height and was just like, bye guys. And I was like, oh my God. And my husband was next to me. We both were just like, our jaws were just on the ground. We were like, do we touch him? Do we say goodbye? Like if I hug him, I won't let go. So maybe I just won't touch him. Like
That's so funny. It's like the ultimate Thor moment, like with the cape, and you're like, oh my gosh, am I in an Avengers movie right now? What's happening?
I felt like it was a cape moment. In real life, it probably was just such a normal like 2-second interaction. But for me, I was like, time slowed down. Like what's happening in my life? It was crazy. But they're just so nice, so lovely.
That's insane. I also love how I love how you slept in the car out the front, even though they live in a literal mansion. Like, what?
Yeah, didn't he have a spare couch or anything like that? I don't know.
Yeah, there were so many people there that we all just, I don't think any of us really thought about what would happen at night. Like, we're just like, yeah, we'll rock up to the Hemsworths. And then we're like, oh, it's like 2 a.m. and we're in the hinterland and what are we going to do? And we just went back to our cars. It was great.
So good.
Pitching a tent in his backyard or something. That could have been another option. Who knows? Bust out the matcha tea.
Yeah. I just felt like I wasn't quite ready to move in. Like I would have loved to take it to the next level. I don't think they were ready for it. So yeah, I thought I should probably retreat out back to the car and not just like sleep over uninvited.
Well, from what we know, you obviously didn't do anything too creepy in that moment because you got an invite again. Was it the next year to LA?
Yeah.
Was it LA? San Diego.
San
Or something?
Diego.
Yeah. So run us through what actually happened there.
Oh my gosh. Again, it was just like one of those things where I think, I always say that if you plan your life out too rigidly, you miss out on all the other amazing plans you never could have thought of that are actually better plans for your life. And so once I sort of dropped the whole law thing of needing to have my 5 and 10 year plan happening, I went the opposite way and became super spontaneous. And they just happened to, I think there was a couple of sites in the States that we could have looked at as possible venues. And so our business partner was like, maybe we should think about going back over there. And then he'd spoken to the boys and was like, we might, maybe in December come and look at a few places. And they were like, oh, well, we're all going to be in America. So they all meet in the same place. Wherever they all are, they have Christmas and New Year's together. All the kids, all the parents. It's really lovely. And they happened to be doing it in San Diego. And so they were like, we're having another New Year's party. Like, if you guys want to come. And I think it was like maybe the 28th of December. And we were like,
gosh,
we can go to San Diego tomorrow. Like, why could we not do that? So we just went and just turned out. It was so random. And it was one of those moments where you're like, what am I doing? Like, what is my life? Who even knows how I ended up here? But they were just so lovely. And I think, yeah, they just, again, they wanted to get to know us better and we just hung out. And it was, I think there might maybe 40 of us that time, all the same people. So all the Craig and Leonie, Miley's mum, a lot of their friends like Luke Zocchi, Taika Waititi, they're all the same best friend group that kind of keep coming back every year. And it's actually really lovely that you see like the chef, I think his name's Sergio, is one of Chris's friends from school. Like they all just hang out with their really tight bunch of mates that have stayed really close. And I think that keep them all, like the whole group stays really grounded because they've been friends for so long and they just give each other shit and it's amazing.
Which celebrity's car did you hang out in overnight in the front yard?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with your husband
I
as well.
don't even remember where
I'm
we
not putting any
stayed.
words there, but yeah.
I think we actually got ourselves some accommodation. We felt like, we could upgrade to like a hotel motel holiday inn kind of thing. So
that's
no
not
cars
fun.
that time.
You went back to a hotel. Come on, Sarah.
Honestly, Sarah, you've said that you're like a T grade celebrity, but at this point, I want to classify you as like B grade or A grade even. Like, this is insane.
Yeah.
That is such a big jump. Wow, T to B.
But
Guys, I'm so flattered.
rules-
I should hang around with you more often.
Look, the rules are though that you've got to go to a celebrity party by the end of this year. You got to in order to maintain that status, you need to be doing something like pretty cool every single year, I think.
And you have to bring us now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I've like already maxed out. I think I've peaked too early, and now it's just a downhill spiral. So now I'm not sure what to do with my life. Like, where do you go from there?
Oh, that's so good. Alrighty, so we'll jump into a bit of a fun game that we have on our podcast. So we're going to do hashtag this or that. It's in the name, Sarah. You just let us know which one you prefer. I'll throw the first one at you. I know that you love going on vacations and everything like that. But if you had to choose between the beach or a snow vacation. The beach? Oh, that was easy.
Oh, you got to let her
easy. I
finish
didn't
your
even
question.
finish.
Yeah.
I didn't even need to hear. I was like, you know what? I feel so strongly about this. I don't need to hear what the other option is.
That is so good. What's your favorite beach to go to?
Ooh, we pretty much beach hop. It's actually been like interesting the past 12 to 18 months not being able to have something booked in to look forward to. But we tend to follow warm locations around the world. Like anytime we go anywhere, it's never for a snow holiday. It's always for some kind of warmer location.
Yeah.
I don't know. Gosh, there are so many beautiful beaches around the world.
It's too many to choose from.
I know. I love the Amalfi Coast in Italy. I think it's just one of the coolest places in the world. The beaches aren't that beautiful in terms of, like, it's not the white sand and turquoise waters of some island locations, but I love how the cities are built like right up on the beach and they go up those cliffs and it's just those sleepy beachy towns. Like, I love the lifestyle there. Actual pristine beaches, I feel like Thailand has some amazing beaches.
Yes.
But we're also really spoiled in Australia. We have the most amazing coastline. We went to, where was it? Margaret River in WA. Like, that's got to be one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. We're so spoiled for choice here. And I think being forced to only travel domestically has actually forced a lot of Australians to appreciate what we have here, even though otherwise we're always jet setting off straight away to overseas. But we're so spoiled here with nature.
Totally.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. All right, next one, Pilates or a HIIT workout?
Oh, my answer to that is going to be different at different stages of the year. So I'm really phasey. I go through phases where I really need HIIT and then I only do running and then I only do Pilates and then I only do yoga and then I come back to HIIT. At the moment, I think HIIT. I need I've got like a lot of pent up energy from just being inside a lot last year. I really need to just like sweat it out and smash out a hard one. So I think probably HIIT.
So true. The whole way through lockdown for me, especially, like I just did HIIT workouts every day because I was like, I can't go anywhere, but I need to feel like I'm like doing some hard activity right now.
Yeah. And you're kind of like angry. So you're like, ugh, just like get into it.
Yeah, I mean,
Although I've been
that's all
doing,
Sorry, Sarah, go on. You're far more interesting than me, so you talk.
Oh my gosh, not at all. I've been doing row former. So if that is allowed to be part of my answer, then I would say Pilates, because Pilates row former, which is the reformer bed, but also with a Concept 2 rower at the end, like attached to it. It's called Strong. It's been around since, I think, the middle of last year. One of our best friends has opened 3 studios. Yeah, Ramsey. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he actually said to say hello to you
2 weeks ago. I love Ramsey. He's a
Sarah's.
champion. Yeah. Small world.
Yeah. So I am like, usually I like HIIT, but anything rower, ski erg, like I get a bit vomity and I really like, it's a bit too intimidating. So at the start I was like, I'm not coming. Like, I love you, Rams. I'll come once to the launch, but it's not my thing. But because it's really short bursts of each, the strength is so hard. And just when you think you're about to die, then you jump on the rower. And just when you think the rowing's too hard, then you jump back. And it's kind of the most efficient way to get a bit of everything. Like, you get strength and cardio, but it's low impact. And because I like to get the maximum amount done in the least amount of time,
Totally.
I've become pretty addicted to that. So,
oh my gosh, I want to try that so bad, because I've done reformer, like just normal reformer, which is normally my workout for when I just feel like lying down but still working out. So I totally want to try that as well. It sounds so good.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Ramsey, we'll be in touch for charging you for this ad that you have never asked for. But
basically a free promo right now.
But yeah, it looks pretty cool. For a guy that's never done Pilates, it looks like something that I'd try. So
So
there you
good.
go.
All right.
Well,
and
it's so good. For girls who are good at Pilates, it makes them do rower. And for guys who are good at rowing but not good at strength, it makes them do Pilates. So it kind of gets you into something that you wouldn't normally do.
yes,
Hmm.
my boyfriend, I tried to get him to do Pilates with me and he was like, I'm never doing that. I don't know what it is with guys and not wanting to be into Pilates. Like, I think they think it's not going to be hard. And I'm like, just try it. It's so hard, I swear.
It's the movements.
Or it's the opposite. They're not very good at it. And they're like, because like they
Yes.
don't use those muscles. And so they're like, I hate not being good at it. I'm not going to do it.
Yes, so true.
Yeah.
Oh.
Similar to yoga, I'd say, with a lot of guys, but it's very challenging to say the least. So,
Very true, very true. All right, Sarah, so you're an author as well as having your own podcast. If you had to choose between reading a book, oh my gosh, I just said reading
you
a
said your
book.
name.
I said my name. Oh my gosh.
Read into her personality. What is the type of person you think that Brooke is?
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're not like palm readers over here or anything. If you had to choose between reading a book or listening to a podcast, what would you choose?
Oh, that's really hard. Oh, I love both, but probably reading. I mean, I'd like to say, like, lazy me would say podcast because I love that you can kind of just lie down and like not sometimes I'm so lazy that I'm like, I really want to read, but I don't want to hold the book up. So I'm just going to listen to a podcast.
First world problems. Goodness me.
I need like someone to build a book holder. But I think like there's something about reading a physical book that is so analog, and I love that because it really pulls you away from your devices, and particularly if you're reading something fiction, it pulls your whole brain into a different world and out of your work and out of the to-do list, which is increasingly difficult to do. Whereas if I'm podcasting, even if I'm listening to something that's not related to my work, because I podcast, I'll like tune into little audio things or music things or the way that they do something. I might suddenly tick over into, oh, I should announce my ads that way. Oh, that would be a really good way to do that, and I start to click into the on mode rather than completely switch off. So I'd probably say read a book.
Yeah, you just get straight into work mode the second you start listening to a podcast. That's like me. Like I work on the social team here and I'll just be like chilling on social media and the next minute I'll be like, oh my gosh. And then I'll message my manager like, we have to do this reel. This is such a great idea. And she's like, Brooke, it's 10 o'clock at night. What are you doing?
That's the spirit, Brooke. Good stuff. Going down the rabbit hole of social. I love it. Sarah, you talked about needing someone to build you something to hold your book. One of the best presents my mum loved from a few years ago. You know when you're in like Australia Post, or I think they're even in $2 shops, and they've always got those like, especially in Australia Post, like next to the line, like they've always got those crappy little things that cost too much that you should never buy, but you buy them on the spur of the moment. Mm-hmm. One was like one of these like, it's almost like a pillow or something that holds your book. And she uses it obsessively and it just fits into your body and you don't have to hold the book and you can just read it. So there you go. There's the answer to your
We need to get you one
woes.
of those.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I actually think I've seen those. Do they look like a music stand but they're made of pillow?
Yes. Yeah, that's the
stuff?
one.
Like
That's
it
the one.
sits up.
Yeah.
So innovative.
$1, probably 50 cents for them to make it and they sell it for like $25. That's the Australia Post business model right there.
I mean, lazy people are a really strong market. We all pay a lot to like not have to use our own arms.
That is such a good point.
100%. Well, look, the whole world is run off convenience. You know, you could walk to Newcastle, but you drive a car, right? You could drive a car, but you get an Uber. And you could paddle across the oceans or get on a ship, but we get a plane. So convenience is what runs this world. Last question, Sarah. Be careful with this answer. Melbourne or Sydney?
Oh. Well, it's easy for me because I'm a Melbourne girl. So I would definitely say Melbourne. But, caveat, I think this is my best way of describing Melbourne and Sydney to people who don't really understand the dynamics. they're two sisters, and Sydney is the pretty sister. So in terms of weather and views, like you can't rival the harbour. You absolutely, Melbourne can't compete with that. It is just, without even doing anything, Sydney is absolutely stunning. And 18 degrees in winter, I mean, you've kind of won already. But because she's pretty, she hasn't had to develop a personality. But Melbourne, as the ugly sister, has had to really develop culture. So our food and bars and coffee and restaurants, like when it rains, Melbourne is just as fun as when it doesn't rain. In Sydney, if it rains, people are like, what do I do? It's like no one knows what to do with themselves. The traffic stops, everything closes. So I feel like I'm biased because I like Melbourne's personality, and I feel like our arts and food and dining, I'm a big foodie, so the food scene is really important to me. I would always pick Melbourne, but I think that Sydney people would probably be biased towards Sydney, and all those people who float in between, I'm like, you definitely have a favourite, and it's definitely Melbourne. So
That's actually so true, because when I was writing these questions, I was like, oh, Sydney all the way. But that just whole analogy has honestly made me not change my mind, but I'm like, yeah, that's so true. I actually kind of like both of them equally, but then I'd lean more biased towards Sydney.
Yeah, I mean, we were so good that our premiers and leaders in charge were able to create the lockout laws to pretty much destroy nightlife for 8 years or whatever it was. So that's how cocky we are, that we think that we can literally destroy a night economy and still think we're the best. So yeah, it pretty much sums up Sydney. And why Melbourne definitely has a greater cultural personality. But look, hey, I like sunshine, so I'm picking Sydney.
I hear that. I do hear the weather alone is kind of a serious advantage, which I think is a bit unfair. But yeah, I think on an all year round basis, we survive through winter and do fun stuff. My Sydney friends are like,
That's actually so true, because it's been raining here recently and everyone's mood has just dropped. The second it starts raining in Sydney, we don't know what to do with ourselves. We're like, what is this? What's going on?
It's blue skies outside and Brooke turns up to work. She literally, she had a jumper over the top of this. It's 18 degrees. I'm in a shirt. I'm annoyed because I wore long pants today, and I'm like, nah, it's still short weather.
Oh my gosh.
And you're looking like you're going on an Arctic expedition. So
anything under 20 degrees is freezing for me. That's too cold.
We're the opposite. You'll see anyone on the beach in a bikini at 15 degrees in Sydney is Melbourne people who are oh my God, it's so hot.
Oh, that's so good. All right, we'll jump into the more serious questions now, Sarah. So you have your books called Seize the Yay, and your podcast is also called Seize the Yay as well. So where did this phrase come from, and what does it mean to you?
Great question. So randomly, it came to me in, I reckon, 2017, maybe 2 years before I actually knew what I was going to do with it. And I think that's tended to happen to me in time. Phrases or words or things will start to marinate a lot earlier than I actually know what they're going to be useful for. But I just think it's after I'd left the firm. So I started Matcha Maiden in the very end of 2014, start of 2015. And it obviously involved the most drastic change of life from a very, very structured, certainty-based, corporate, quite repetitive and very safe world to a completely, the appetite for risk in business is enormous. There is no stability. Things are changing every second. It's such a dynamic world. And that was such a dramatic shift and big step out of my comfort zone that I think I spent the next 3 or 4 years patting myself on the back for it, really. Being really proud that I'd made such a shift, but thinking that I would never need to take another step. And I think what I started to realize when I began to sort of agitate for what was next was, well, actually, rather than you waking up one day and finding your passion, which I thought was kind of the process, it's journey, destination, happiness, the end. Actually, your yay, what I call it now, but your passion or your best life is an ongoing process that's supposed to look different in every chapter because the world is different, which means you're going to be different. And we're no longer in an age where you do choose one career and one partner and one house and stay in that for sort of 20, 30, 40 years. The world just moves so quickly that actually the average now is 5 to 7 careers in a lifetime. So things are just so different. So I started to sort of about 4 years in, think about things more as a jigsaw puzzle than a complete picture. And I started to realize that maybe what had suited me in the big Matcha chapter was maybe not what suited me now. So what were the pieces that I needed to get rid of, and what were the pieces that were missing that I needed to go and find? And Caleb, you will totally understand this with Tropeaka, that as your business gets bigger, sometimes the reason why you go into it becomes less and less your role. And so I got further and further away from the customer, because as we scaled, that wasn't my role anymore. And I realized actually the people bit is the bit that I love. The very early beginnings of building community is the bit that I love. Wearing a high-vis vest in a factory and dealing with logistics all day and freight and shipping and postage and cross-border taxes, like that's not my jam. And it took me a really long time to accept that it was okay and it wasn't ungrateful to find that maybe I needed to shift my energy a bit again. And as I started looking for the missing pieces, I was like, what is the bit that's missing? It's the people part, but it was also the behind the scenes stuff. It was the stuff I couldn't talk about on the Matcha page. Like, for example, that I had, left my job to find my yay and it wasn't feeling yay anymore. Like self-doubt, comparison, burnout, like the fact that you can't put on your business page, you didn't get your Matcha order today because I'm on the floor with my period in the fetal position. Like those conversations they needed to live somewhere, and I didn't have anywhere to talk about them. But I thought that actually people would be more inspired and maybe take on your message more if they heard the rawer stuff that goes with it, rather than just the shiny, glossy, perfect product on the outside. So this is such a long-winded way of saying that I realized my philosophy had become seizing the day, which was amazing. It's so amazing to seize every opportunity in life that's, available to you and to never leave opportunities unturned. But as Matcha got bigger, I had left a corporate job to be happy, and then I'd made Matcha Maiden corporate. So I'd kind of run away from this world and then recreated it around me. And I hadn't taken a day off. I had lost sight of joy. I'd lost sight of anything for the sake of momentum and goals. And, I just was trying to get bigger and better all the time, and had forgotten that I came into it to find what made me yay. So I thought, what if we just tweaked that idea? Instead of the glorification of busy and instead of just like goals and success, maybe we should just be happy. Maybe we should just focus on what's joyful. So seize the yay. I woke up one day and I was like, that's my philosophy. It's joy, and not necessarily joy without problems, joy with all the problems, joy in spite of self-doubt, in spite of burnout, in spite of comparison, but a bigger, more whole conversation about finding your way in the world. And by sort of a process of elimination, I was like, if that can't live on Matcha Maiden, where's it going to live? Where do conversations live? A podcast. I'd never listened to one before. I didn't know anything about sound editing, but I just felt like alongside the actual business journey could be the behind the scenes journey of myself and whoever else would be happy to talk about it. And that was at a time nearly 3 years ago, when probably it wasn't as common to share vulnerabilities and to share the less glamorous side of things. It was just starting. And so it gained a lot of traction very quickly, and a year in turned into a book offer, and now has morphed into what I do most of the time, which is, again, like one of those things that I never could have predicted this was my next chapter, but somehow it unraveled this way.
That's so incredible.
I love that so much. There's so much to unpack in all of that. One thing that you highlighted was self-awareness, actually. So realizing, hey, I love the community building side of things. I don't like being in a high vis in the warehouse sorting out logistics. That ties so much into purpose and realizing why you actually started something. And even for Tropeaka, Tropeaka's grown so much where at the start, it was all about, as you know, like doing literally every job yourself, and then you build a team, and then you have team take over different responsibilities, and then suddenly you're further away from the customer and whatnot, and kind of having that North Star of like, okay, having that self-awareness of like, okay, this is the reason I started it. Can I still fulfill that purpose and that reason? For Tropeaka and me, it's like I want to help millions of people in their health through physical products because I went through my own health journeys that were absolutely debilitating. So I'd love you to talk I mean, this is such a great opportunity for you to talk about self-awareness and understanding how you actually, because you can say seize the yay, but I know there's so much more in terms of where you come from, in terms of the purpose behind things and why you do what you do, and then drawing that back to the self-awareness of knowing why you do what you do. So can you chat a little bit further about that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think something I've come to realize in the last couple of years is that once you kind of find your why, and that can take a really long time, and I still maybe don't know exactly what it is, but once you know the core principles of your why, the how is going to be different through all different chapters of your life. And I think what I've learned over time is that you can actually get, and this is part of the CCA philosophy, that you can actually get really, really detached from yourself. So far detached because you get distracted by the white noise of being busy or what other people think is successful, that I actually got to a point looking back when I was a lawyer where people would ask me, like, what would you do if you want, I'd say, I don't think I'll be a lawyer forever. And they'd say, well, what do you think you want to do? What do you like doing? And I genuinely couldn't even answer what I liked, let alone what I wanted to do with it, let alone what passion was. I had just become so disconnected. And it's interesting that you say self-awareness now, because I like to think I'm quite self-aware, but it has taken like a good decade of figuring out who I am and getting back in touch with, like, I've had to treat myself like a research project. I was so unaware of what I liked, what I was good at, where the blur, what the difference was between those two concepts. I think there's a big expectation as well that if you're good at something, you should do it. And so then if it happens that you don't necessarily enjoy it, you feel guilty then if you're not using that skill because you just happen to be good at it. I was a pretty good lawyer, so I felt like, oh, well, I should use this even if I don't enjoy it. And so I think self-awareness is something that you definitely cultivate. It can take a really long time, but you can't figure out what's good for you and what you like and what your best life is going to look like until you figure out who you are. And I think people try and work that out in reverse. They kind of look at a lifestyle that someone else has that makes them happy, that they think looks good, and then they reverse engineer, well, I should do that, so I need to make my life look like this. And I've seen it many times where people who are completely unsuited to a certain lifestyle emulate it, get there, realize actually they hate everything about that life structure and go back to what they had before. And particularly with creatives, something that I've learned even more over the last little while is that I probably was a bit too gung-ho in the first few years of Matcha Maiden about leave corporate, stop working for the man, do your own thing. What I've realized is actually I'm not passionate about telling people to leave their jobs at all. I'm passionate about people finding what life structure suits them, whether it's in corporate or out of corporate, and doing more of that. And for some people, that's not going out to do their own thing. I have friends that once they made their passion, particularly in music or the arts, once they made it their job and they added money, quotes, budgets, deadlines, and briefs, they actually didn't enjoy it anymore. So going out on their own killed the joy in what they do, and they ended up going back to a job. And above all, I think the most important thing is experimentation. Treat yourself like a research project. I got to the point where I would literally write down when I felt happy in a journal, and then months later go back and look at the journal entries and circle the things that turned up the most. Like, I couldn't even answer you what I enjoyed doing until I wrote it down and then studied myself like a data project. But that's
so
sometimes what it takes. That's what it can take to develop self-awareness.
What was some of the patterns that you noticed in your own life around that when you went back and circled things?
I think I was very fortunate that I had started Matcha Maiden by accident, and that showed a whole different area of work that I would never have been able to see in law because it didn't exist, that allowed me to circle. I'm really, really excited when I'm designing logos, when I'm drawing, when I'm writing copy, when I'm talking to people about the brand's vision, like all the creative bucket type of workflow and jobs were the things that suddenly made me really excited. And I only knew that by being able to compare to what I was doing. But if I hadn't gone and tried those things, I would have forgotten that I'd loved them because you only know what you're doing right now. But it's funny that when I looked back at my childhood, those have always been the things that I enjoyed. The data was always there. there comes a point, I think around year 11 and 12 and through uni, where you stop paying attention to that really obvious information that anyone could tell you about what you like and what makes you sparkle. And you let everything else start to cloud those decisions, and you let societal norms and expectations and what's sensible and creating a future cloud your judgment. Those things are really important, but they're not the only thing that should inform your decisions. And then suddenly you end up in a job where you're like, yeah, this ticks all the boxes, but has it got anything to do with what I'm good at or what I like? Maybe not. So yeah, I would say on self-awareness that it can be a slow journey. It's a dedicated journey. Most people don't wake up just knowing who they are and what they like. And it takes a lot of trying new things. You can't know what you like and what you don't like until you try stuff. And it took a lot of experimentation, a lot of networking outside of legal circles, a lot of going to events and, you know, talking to business people, talking to people who weren't lawyers. For the whole time pretty much that I was a lawyer, I was looking outside of that world just to see what was out there. And you'll very quickly know if something doesn't resonate with you or it does. And I think just stepping your toe into new waters as much as you can until you get more jigsaw puzzle pieces. Like every experience that you do will give you either more pieces or help you throw out pieces that aren't working for you anymore. But the biggest thing is making sure you are always doing that exploration, because it's so easy to sit in your comfort zone and just rest in the normal. And I often think now when I think about this whole CZA philosophy that I was so lucky that I had a circuit breaker by accident. I started a business by accident because I needed the product myself. But most people don't get that. And if you're not actively unhappy, you often won't make a change because you're not inconvenienced enough. So you'll sit in something that's just fine for who knows how long. So I'm not worried about the people who are desperately unhappy. They'll probably reach a tipping point where they change their life because it's too hard. I'm worried about all the people who are just like, like blah, life's okay, because they're missing out on life being great because they probably just don't know what else there is. So I think, explore different things, try new things, speak to new people, and just keep an open mind and be patient because it takes a little while. I still am like, there are pieces of myself that are totally unexplored, and that I might still have many, sort of jigsaw puzzle pieces to discover. But right now, I think I've got a pretty good picture, and it's taken a while to get here.
Yeah. And now you touched on this a bit, but you're a lawyer and you've left the corporate world. What would your advice be to people who are stuck in that corporate 9 to 5 and they hate it, but they don't know how to leave? They're scared that they're not going to have enough time if they need to do another degree, or that, they just might be scared of what it might change, or that, they might know if they can't go back or not. What would you say to them?
Oh, that's such a good one. I think a couple of things. The first thing is we're very quick to lament a waste of time. I think we're so focused on productivity and goals and achievement that, the first question I get asked about leaving law is, are you sad that you wasted a decade of your life? I don't think anything is ever a waste if you learnt something from it. And if the only thing you learnt is that something's not for you, that's still pretty valuable. That's still a piece of data that's most people don't have. So I think if you go into every experience, even places that you don't want to be forever, and even a job that you don't like right now, just go into it trying to soak up every single thing you can from it, because it will always give you a skill, if not many skills, that 10 years down the track in your next job, you'll be like, oh, that was much more useful than I ever knew. And the other thing is, I think, again, in the excitement of seizing the yay, it could be easy to interpret most of what I say as like, rip the Band-Aid, drop the self-doubt, leave your job and go and follow your dreams. But there are, of course, realities of bills. Like, you have to pay bills. Sometimes you have dependents. Sometimes you might have kids. So I'm not saying to people to jump out of something before they have something to jump to. And I think if you're not happy where you are, but you don't know where you would go, that's not necessarily the right time to jump away from what you've got, because there are realities, and that could maybe even make you more unhappy than just staying where you are while you figure it out. But if you are in that situation, use every second of spare time that you have to explore other things, to maybe try and build something to jump to. Maybe a side hustle is going to be something that gives you a lot of joy and creates an opportunity for you to build something on the side while you can still pay your bills. I didn't leave the law firm until 7 months after we started. And even that was considered quite early in a startup journey to go full time. So it sometimes looks like everything happens really quickly, but it doesn't have to. And you do have to have a healthy risk appetite, but also minimize the risk as much as you can. And the longer you can wait in your job before you make a jump, the less risk and the smaller the jump actually is. So I think that's an important thing. Like, do think about the reality of what your basic, needs are. And the other thing is, by seizing the yay, I definitely don't mean that you have to find yay in your job. As much as that's a beautiful privilege and I feel so lucky to have that opportunity, I think it's a very modern generation concept that we have to be stimulated all the time. Like a couple of generations ago, they would laugh at you if you were like, are you passionate about farming and agriculture? They'd just be like, I have to put food on the table for my family. Like, passion about my job is not a question. It's actually a wonderful indulgence to be able to even ask that. But I think because so many of us have been able to do that, it feels like something we're entitled to. And like, if you're not fulfilled in your job 24/7, it's like, well, I should leave. This is not my passion. But actually, I find there are people who won't get passion in their job because, like I said before, sometimes it kills the passion in what they do if they have to do it for work. So there are many people who don't love their jobs, but they do it because it pays the bills, and they find space for their passion outside of work. And sometimes that's a good balance. Sometimes that's something that makes you yay, where you're like, my job's fine. I go to work, I come home, and on the weekends I play music or I write books or whatever. And as long as you're finding joy somewhere in your life, I think it's contagious. It filters through to all the other areas of your life. The biggest problem is where people aren't enjoying their work, but they're not enjoying anything else either. That's where it's sort of, a dangerous cycle of, well, what is your purpose and how can you find something that really lights you up? But I think you'll notice when you're doing something that you really enjoy on the weekends, you have a better week. Because firstly, the joy that you get carries over into the first few days of the week, and then the rest of the week you're looking forward to the opportunity to do it again. So don't think that you have to be joyful about everything that you do in your life. It definitely doesn't have to be your career because, again, work sometimes is just work, and that's totally okay as well.
Yeah, there's so much truth in that. Like, even the fact when you go back to what you're saying about like 2 generations ago, like people are just trying to survive. And that's the case in so many areas still around the world. But there's so much gratitude that someone can have just in the fact that we have the opportunity these days to even consider the question that, hey, like I could have satisfaction through my job, or I could have satisfaction through a side hustle that I create or whatnot. And if you approach things from the gratitude angle of being like, hey, I've actually got this opportunity where I live in the digital revolution, the digital economy, where I can literally get on Masterclass or any other educational platform between the hours of like 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. at night, and then on the weekend, and I can you can literally try 3 different things in one night and actually continually build up like a bank, a resource of like, okay, I didn't like this and I didn't like this and I didn't like this, but I kind of like this, and actually I like this. And like our journeys are so similar in the fact that like I had a tennis coaching business before I started Tropeaka. I came up with the idea in 2014, and I put all my money into it, and my business partner as well. We had no money in our bank account. We launched in February 2016, and it wasn't until and like we had rapid growth, and it wasn't until it was longer than you. It was actually January 2017 that I actually quit, and I was like, well, actually even after that, I think it was like I was still coaching tennis while I had like my own employees. It was crazy. I had employees that I was paying that was like working for me full time. And so like people need to have that patience. They need to have that understanding. Like things don't like, with patience and hard work, like things open up to you over time. And I know you've interviewed Gary Vee, and which is like amazing. And he talks about the fact, like, just dive headfirst into everything, like try a whole bunch of different things. And do you have any other tips that, I know I mentioned like things like masterclass, but do you have other tips or whatnot on exploring different passions? I mean, it sounds like such an obvious question, but people actually really struggle in trying to find out what even their next step should be in terms of passions.
Oh, totally. I mean, when I literally look back and realize I had to study myself like I would a hamster to figure out like what my own tendencies were, it's ridiculous that a like quite educated person who thought of myself at the time as quite self-aware could not answer simple questions about my own tendencies. But that's how detached some of us get from our basic instincts of what we like and what we don't like. So I think I definitely agree with all of that. And there are many, many things that I found really helpful, and they're really, really cliche, like literally just making a list of all the eat, pray, love kind of things that are stereotypical. Like I went to ceramics classes. I started an adult gymnastics class. I went to hip hop classes. Like, it sounds silly, but that's where you start. You start with like, what is the most obvious list of hobbies that might give me a little clue about, okay, well, I don't need more physical activity. That's not my jam. Like, you'll know pretty quickly if you like tactile things, or you like creative arty things, or you like movement things. Like, I think start with the really obvious things. And because, while you are in that kind of fact gathering phase, you're not going to, necessarily need to, I think sometimes you think, oh, maybe I should do an MBA. And like, that's a huge commitment. Those are really big decisions. You can probably start with like hour-long casual classes of things before you, go into a whole investment of something. So I love that idea. Tap into the fact that the digital world has made skills and learning and upskilling so democratic. Masterclass is amazing. I found the most useful thing were like networking events. And as much as networking is the most frustrating, annoying activity anyone can do, and breaking into the circle to like make friends, it's so awkward. But if you just own it and know that it's going to be awkward, and you've come alone, and you're in here to be uncomfortable and break the circle, like own that it's going to be a bit weird. But going to those things, you hear different stories, you meet new people, you hear how they got through the confused, lost bits. Like, the only thing you can get from that is inspiration. Or you meet someone in the audience who has something interesting to say to you. And I feel like the more you can do stuff that stretches your brain to new possibilities. Or even you might meet someone who's like does salsa, and you're like, oh, I might do salsa, You're never going to get more ideas by just sitting in your house by yourself or talking to the same people that you talk to every day. Like, I was never going to get very far only consulting my colleagues because they were in exactly the same place as I was. So networking beyond your circles, turning up at stuff where you're going to hear stories. Masterclass is amazing. Signing up for courses. Like, there are short courses on everything that you can do that will just expose you to like the 101 version of something. And that will give you a really quick temperature check on like whether you need more of this or less of that. And the other thing I would say is, like, talking about Gary Vee, something that I think about all the time with that whole just throw yourself into things. And you said, Brooke, before about like, what advice would I give? Another big piece of advice is like, what is the worst that can happen? Even if you did leave a job that you hated, what is the worst case scenario? And sometimes like there are obviously consequences, but usually they're not as bad as you actually think, because we catastrophize and our self-doubt makes us only see the bad things, and then they snowball into this like, I'm going to be homeless on the street. But actually most of the time, the worst case scenario is like, you look silly for 5 minutes, you lose a little bit of money. Like, most of the time we're not starting ideas that involve investing $75 million so that if it fails, we've lost $75 million, Most of our ideas are smaller, and most of the risks we're taking for a first step are smaller. And the worst that can happen is often just that you find something you don't like and you don't do it again. Like, what's the big deal? I think we are so scared of waste, but also looking silly and also failure, that we tend to not do anything because we don't want that feeling. But actually, if you talk yourself through to the worst case scenario in most of these scenarios, you'll be like, everything is recoverable from, if that makes sense. Like, English wise, you can recover from any situation and start again. And so maybe do take a risk. Maybe do, go and go back to study something brand new that you never thought you would. Maybe do invest a little bit of money and time into that. And the worst thing that you'll get is that you didn't like it and you start again and you save it again. But, you'll always make back money. You'll never make back time. And I kind of try and make decisions based on what future me will regret. And I know that sounds like a really weird way to decide things, but if I think about what I'm going to regret in the future and try and avoid that feeling, then I actually don't have any regrets. Even though I've not gone through with a lot of things I've started, none of that has felt like a waste because I did the best and made the best decision I could at the time. And that taught me what I did need to move closer towards because that helped me move further away from other things. So just be adventurous. Get really real about what the actual risks are. And if they're not very big, just go for it because you will always figure out a way around any stumbling block. And those stumbling blocks will probably point you closer towards where you want to be.
And that's so interesting what you say about what future you will regret, because I feel like in a lot of these instances where people may be wanting to step out of the corporate world, they might be thinking, or their excuses in a way might be, oh, but this person said this, or my family will think this, my husband will think this. And it's not actually about what they want at the end of the day, but rather they're more thinking about what everyone around them will think. And it's really about just switching that mindset and going, okay, they might think that, but I need to realize that this is for me, and I need to just choose that I'm not going to do anything that I'm not going to regret. Because if you take all of those other factors out of the situation, there could be so much ahead for you. So yeah.
True.
Totally.
So true.
Totally. And I think the other thing is we always can see the worst case scenario, but you never think about the best case scenario. But logically, if you're going to allow one hypothetical, you have to allow the other.
Yeah.
What if you do it and everyone celebrates the decision? What if everyone in your family thinks that you're brave and courageous and have done this amazing thing? You can't only allow for a hypothetical bad situation without considering, I could actually smash it. This idea could actually be awesome. And it's obviously not natural for us to think that way. And there's a lot of self-protection in assuming the worst because then everything's a bonus. But I do think you've got to allow yourself the possibility that your idea is good. And particularly if it's a business idea or a project that's come out of a gap in the market, which is often how things kind of eventuate, you've got to consider that you're probably not the only one who's discovered that gap. There's probably someone else out there looking for exactly what you have. So you have to trust that, you might have, someone's got to stumble upon the good ideas. Why couldn't it be you?
So true. That's such good, oh my gosh, English.
It's great advice. Well,
I was like, that's just such good gold. I was going to say, that's great. I can't even say it now.
we got the point. Don't worry. It's very true though. And I mean, you did that in the, in starting Matcha Maiden and Matcha, the milk bar, right, as well, which I have been to in St Kilda, and I had a matcha there and it was lovely. Big fan of matcha. We both have matcha in our brands, which is cool. So we're spreading the good news about the fact that, why have a coffee when you can have a matcha? Like the benefits of L-theanine alongside the caffeine to give you that sustained energy release, and it's the most antioxidant powerhouse on the planet. It's an incredible superfood. So you started, you've got an interesting story around starting Matcha Maiden and how that all came about.
Yeah, it was, like I mentioned, a complete accident. I call it the happy accident that led to us literally sourcing matcha to fulfill our own selfish needs. So it was all very selfish, as much as I like to pretend it was us seeing a gap in the market and seeing the trends worldwide. But so basically I was very, very fortunate to be able to spend a month in Rwanda in the first year of my law career. My partner, Nick, or my now husband, he has a creative agency and he likes to say he's never had a job. He's always worked for himself. So we were kind of polar opposites back then. And one of the things he'd been working on was YGAP's 5 cent campaign, which is where they collect all the 5 cent pieces in circulation that can't really be used as legal tender and put it towards charitable projects in Australia, but also overseas. So we got to go and visit one of the schools as a sponsored trip to see them install Wi-Fi for the first time, which was absolutely mind-blowing. And 2 things happened on that trip. I think firstly, you can probably tell I was maybe a little bit itchy for new experiences, if given that I took a month off in my first year, which is very unheard of. But two things happened over there. Firstly, I thought that I would go and have this intense sense of gratitude for everything that we have in our country. And like, I don't know if you guys know, but I was adopted. I was born into an orphanage in South Korea and adopted into an amazing, like my family's amazing, but very white Caucasian dairy farmer family. And that's always instilled in me an incredible sense of sliding doors moments, and the fact that but for that, you know, I would have had a very different life. So I expected to go and have an even more enhanced sense of gratitude for life in Australia, which of course was one level of the experience. But the other thing was that I saw the opposite. I saw happier children playing with a leaf for 12 hours and adults breaking into song because they couldn't contain the joy in their bodies about seeing each other. And it didn't make sense because I'd never seen happiness without success. I'd never thought that if you didn't have progress and goals and like development, you know, and success as we saw it, how could you be happy? And yet without that, they were happier than the people back home who only seemed to want more all the time. The second thing I brought home was a gut parasite, which was nasty.
No.
The first 5 kilos, I was like, this is a great way to lose pounds. And then the next 10 kilos, you know, everyone says like it would be such a nice problem to be losing too much weight. It's actually a horrible problem to have. Your energy is just absolutely shot. And I was, you know, talk about being detached from my own like emotions. I was even more detached from my own physical state, just being one of those A-type lawyers who went straight back to the office, 20-hour days, was smashing myself. I didn't even notice that I'd lost that much weight. Like I was just so out of touch with wellness that I'd eat a broccoli, do a spin class at 5 a.m. and then think like, tick, why am I not the picture of health right now? And so I ended up collapsing in the middle of a meeting, which was so embarrassing, and I couldn't leave the bathroom. And I now know I was having a panic attack from my body just being barely surviving. But at the time I had no idea what was happening because I'd never had that happen before. Diagnosed with adrenal fatigue, couldn't go back to work for quite a few months, and really had to get a grip on how to look after yourself, and that you can't just keep asking of your body all the time without putting anything back in. And of course, as an adrenally compromised person, caffeine from coffee was too harsh for my body. So it would send me into like the jitters that you get. I used to get from 10 cups, I'd get after like half a cup. So I just had to stop drinking it altogether. I stopped drinking alcohol and really went on this intense health journey to just get my strength back. And as soon as I got back to work, I got sent to the firm's headquarters in Hong Kong, which was an incredible experience to work as an expat. And over in Asia, matcha is not the sort of superfood buzzword that it is in the West. It's been around for centuries. So everywhere that I could get a coffee, I could get a matcha latte and not feel like this weirdo who just wanted a water when everyone else was having a latte. And so I discovered this magical powder that would give me a bit of a buzz of energy, but I wouldn't have a panic attack. And it has about half the amount of caffeine as coffee, but obviously, as you know, slow releases into your bloodstream, and just got hooked on being able to get caffeinated energy in a gentle way. Came home. This is so funny that we're about to do a spirulina challenge, because I always say Australia was ripe for a new health food product. We were already really into green smoothies and spirulina, even though that tastes like foot. And I was like, well, you know, matcha actually tastes nice, but it also has all the antioxidant benefits. Like, why is no one, like Caleb, you'll remember that back in, 2014, 15, like it just wasn't available anywhere, even though the Kardashians were drinking it, or Victoria's Secret angels were mentioning it as part of their regime. And it was like sugar. It was a generic product that had no branded version that you could buy easily online. So in our own search for matcha for ourselves, we found a wholesaler that made it organic matcha in Japan and didn't have sort of the additives and sugar or flavoring that a lot of Chinese matcha has in it. It turned up, it was far too much, like 2 million serves too much for 2 people to consume by the use by date. So sort of as a really way to recoup some of the money, but also just get rid of this powder that we were never going to be able to consume ourselves, a business idea came about that was really only, not even intended to be a side hustle. I don't even think we thought it would last that long, like long enough to even be considered a project. It was just that one time, like, let's get rid of this powder. It sold out in a week because, as I mentioned before, it turns out if one person in the world has stumbled upon a gap, usually other people have, and many other people had turned, to Matcha for caffeine and then unable to buy it. And then it just kept going. It just every week I'd sort of be at the firm and realize, oh my God, we need to get Matcha into the country, and how do we do that? And I'm doing law by day and then like Breaking Bad, packing powder into bags by night, and still was like quite bewildered that this was even still going until about 6 months in. We got a big contract from Urban Outfitters in the States, which is when we realized it was an actual thing that had grown and received a lot of attention and momentum from not just our family members and friends. And I left the law firm the next day. And that came back to that whole idea of like, as much as it was the scariest decision that I've made, at the time, it was not as difficult as you would think, because coming back to that like future regret management method of making decisions, I thought, well, law is going nowhere. Like, lawyers are always going to be needed, but this opportunity to be the first to market of a product that everyone already knows about but no one is making, like there's proof of concept already. It's not nearly as risky as it seems. I can come back to law anytime, but I will never come back to this particular opportunity. And I think future me would always regret not seeing how far the curve that had already really started to become quite exponential. Why would I give that to someone else? We've already got that head start. Let's just see how long it goes. And the minute it flops, which we expected would be like a month later, I'll go back. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And that was like 5.5 years ago.
So good.
And here you are now. It's incredible.
How did you, I'm always fascinated by this because we had a very tricky time in the early days. Like, we put all our money into stock, and it cost us like $120,000, like $60,000 each, Blake and myself, over the course of a couple years, getting to the position where we could launch. We grew so fast where keeping stock on a cash flow basis was, and sorry for those that aren't really into business, but I'm fascinated by this. We had a hard time keeping stock. But we still had, even though it was exponential, it was still like, and I'm doing like an upwards curve here with my hand for those listening to the audio. But you had a step. It wasn't a curve. It was here on the first week, and then Urban Outfitters went to here. It's like a magnitude of 10. What did you do from a business perspective to even, one, fulfill that and get all the orders out, and two, even, I'm assuming you would have had to go to the bank and get a loan because they don't pay in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days time for a lot of situations. So how did you actually manage? I find it incredible that you managed to not do an upwards curve, but you managed to do a quantum leap.
Oh, that's very kind. We had no idea what we were doing. Absolutely no idea. And I think naivety in that situation is almost something that works in your favor, because you don't get in as much of a flap, because now I look back and I'm like, yeah, that was stupid. Whereas now I'm like at the time I was like, this is just what happens. Like, this must be what happens after you launch. And so this is normal. So we should just figure it out. And I think almost because we didn't have time to worry too much about it, you just kind of got it done. So the initial stock that we bought, we invested $5,000 in, which was like a lot of money, but also not really in the scheme of like getting a business off the ground. And over the next 6 months of it kind of selling out repeatedly, even though it was a very quantum leap, actually we'd had enough smaller increases along the way to kind of figure out that we needed to double the order each time, and that to do that we would have to max out all the credit cards, and the 50 days interest free that we had on this credit card would cover the terms of like the biggest distributor that we had at the time. And it was a lot of, we didn't actually have to get a loan. So the business has kind of paid itself off, but we did use all my credit cards for the first 2 years, really, working out which one had the most interest-free days before we'd have to pay it. And it was a lot of juggling. Like, I think Rosalind Cogan tells the story of having 15 credit cards and just juggling them all to kind of manage stock. I think I probably had 5, but we would max them out. Like, I would pay for some of the stock on one of them and then put the balance on a different card. And the poor tea farm's like, why? They're like, why did you give us 3 cards? I'm like, just don't ask me, okay? I just don't have a big limit right now.
That's so good. Yeah, people don't realize this. They're like, I want to start a business. And it's like, man, do you know the stress that's actually going into it behind the scenes of like making things work? So yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off. Keep on going.
Was
Sorry.
like, oh, no, it's fine. This regularly selling out, like I reckon the most stressful part of the job for the first little while was not that I'd left my job, was not paying my own wage. It was literally just getting stock into the country on time to get it back out to people that, like, once you put it out there as a business, it looks really glossy on the outside. They don't know that it's just a family in a garage trying to, like, packing quickly to try and get it out. So it's not really, it becomes not really an excuse when you're like, we didn't order enough, like, because we don't know what we're doing. You can't really say that. And so the most stressful part for the whole time, really, until now, has been stock management and managing that payment cycle. And then because you're ordering more each time, but you're not, the payment, like the invoices that you're owed for old stock are not enough to cover that yet because you're projecting for the future. It was really difficult. And with Matcha, the problem with that is, you know, a lot of powders will have like a sort of 24-month shelf life because they're very stable. They don't need much, which means you can kind of stockpile, you can get volume discounts, you can get freight in bulk and kind of be a bit more organized. But Matcha is ground, and then from the minute it's ground, it has like 12 months from then. And so it has to get ground and then freighted. And then, like, most of our distributors would want the full 12-month shelf life on delivery from Australia. So we could only order exactly what we needed at each time, which made it even more stressful because you could just never get ahead because you were always trying to get the latest batch. And it was extraordinarily stressful. And the credit card helped the money thing, but even just the timing of, like, working out. So we ended up air freighting everything because sea freight would take 6 to 12 weeks, and that was too far out from when we needed it. And, like, yeah, I've had maybe 7 breakdowns on that exact point of the business.
I know your pain.
It's very clear that being an entrepreneur is not all the glitz and glamour. What would you say would be the best and worst things about being your own boss?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the best thing, and particularly having seen the other side, is the flexibility. Even though the reality is you're probably working longer hours than you would be even in a law firm. I was working incredibly long hours, but when I was finished and when I did clock off, I was off. Like, I would sort of not have to log in again. I would sometimes have to log in again after hours or on the weekend, but generally once you got home, like, you were home. And you don't have that in business. But the beauty is that you are flexible to arrange those hours how you want and where you want. And I really enjoy the ability to work really concentratedly in times when my energy is really high and kind of ease off a little bit and, like, choose how my week goes based on what else is on. The ability to work from anywhere means that we can travel and we can take a lot more opportunities than I could with my 4 weeks of leave that I'd have to apply for and would rarely get approved anyway. You know, I really enjoy the ability to fit a more full life in around that. And I think getting closer to starting a family, that means even more to me because I think it will allow me to be a better parent, a better working parent than I ever would have been as a lawyer, because you can set up your life in a structure that suits you best rather than always just being somewhere from A to B for the sake, just to put in the FaceTime. So I think that's probably the best part. And coupled with that is not just the flexibility of time, but the flexibility of ideas. Like, in a law firm, if you want a new idea, like, you've got to go through 50,000 million approval processes. And usually at the end, like, if it's too new, too foreign a way of doing something, it probably will get rejected anyway. They're getting better and a little bit more innovative, but in a business, particularly when it's smaller, like, if you want to release a new product, we'd just go, yeah, we'll make it and this person will get it done by next Thursday, and then we'll just launch it. I'll design something on Thursday night and then we'll launch it on Friday. And, like, there's no one telling you no. And then if it doesn't work, you just discontinue it, or you just say it was limited edition. Like, you can really just do whatever you want, and there's no bureaucracy and there's no limit to what you do with it and what community you create. And like, one day I decided that part of Matcha is, you know, a healthy lifestyle overall, and I wanted to make these booty bands because I thought that would be really fun. And a friend of ours in the States made them, and we wanted to do a US tour, and so we made a limited edition round of green booty bands because, like, why not? Like, it's got nothing to do with tea, but it was so much fun to have this pack that had a band, and we made a workout blend custom that went with it that had Matcha and like all these adaptogens in it, and did this tour around the States. And like, it wasn't a good business move in terms of like, it got a lot of exposure. It didn't make us a lot of money, but it was the best. And I love that, you know, no one's kind of making you think in a box at any one time. You can just do whatever you want. The worst parts, I don't think there are any worst parts because you're so excited usually about your idea that even when it's really tough, you know why it's tough. Whereas I think I used to find it really difficult when I'd be pulling really long hours and I didn't see the point of what I was doing, or I didn't see how it was going to help someone, or the impact wasn't clear, or the work would get redone by someone else later anyway. Like, there's something about purpose that makes challenge really easy to stomach. So I wouldn't call anything the worst part, but I would say the most challenging part is that when you work for someone else, you have a bit of an incentive to switch off because, you know, you're kind of like excited to clock off, and balance comes a little bit more easily because it's just incentives. Like, you want your holidays because you work really hard and then you play really hard. But when you love what you do and you doing the stuff has a really clear output of like your figures getting better, or your community being more engaged, or you get positive affirmation for every extra minute you invest in the business, you don't have any reason to rest. And if you enjoy it, and you know, people say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. When it feels that way, you don't think that you're expending energy because your cup is getting so filled by adrenaline. But I actually have found burnout harder to manage now that I can choose when I work and when I don't. You would think that like it would make balance much more easy because I could just go to yoga at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, and I could just like choose my sleeping hours or take a nap. But it's the opposite. Without structure, without balance, and without boundaries, like, no one gives you those. So you could just keep going until you crash. And the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened is the story of Matcha started because I burnt out. 2 years into Matcha, I burnt out again. And I left corporate to avoid that. And yet I found myself collapsed again, back with adrenal fatigue, trying to push this business that was all about wellness and looking after yourself. And I was like, my own wellness had become the last priority in the process, which is the irony of running a business in wellness, Caleb. I'm sure you feel that exact way, that most people in wellness businesses have like crashed from sacrificing their own at some point and then had to realize like it's hypocritical to do business that way. You actually have to sort of live what message you're telling, but you can't do that unless you get really strict about your boundaries. So I think that's the hardest thing, is knowing that you're actually doing yourself and your business a disservice if you go so hard that you burn out because it's not sustainable. So rather than 110% for a month and then nothing, just do 80% and you'll last the whole year. Like, it's okay to sort of manage your pace in a way that you're actually going to last the distance.
1,000,000%. I love the phrase, put your own oxygen mask on first. So it's just a metaphor for looking after yourself. Like, I can't be great to my employees unless I'm great to myself first and I'm coming from like a full cup, right? And for me, that journey's been like, I still work 12 to 15 hours every day. Now, I'm able to do that for a few reasons. I'm able to do that because I'm so passionate and on purpose that I wouldn't want to do anything else. Like, I've got a TV in front of me and I've got a gaming console, and I choose not to because I just love what I do. So it always makes it easier. But obviously, there's so much weight in running a business, and I actually recover and I put more crazy focus on recovering than I do on actually output. So input for me, and it comes back to self-awareness. Like, I'm really into biohacking, which is all about how I could like get the most out of my life in terms, and I make it a game. How can I make my body the healthiest possible, the healthiest it can be possible? And one thing I really loved was and this is great for everyone listening, is the vocabulary. Like you use the word challenge. You didn't use the word, Brooke gave you the word, what is the worst thing? And you change that around and you reframe that to know what is the biggest challenge. And I find that is so important, the vocabulary that we use. Like I used the word just before. I didn't use the word stress. I used the word weight. The story that I'm telling myself is, I'm under a lot of weight, more than most people could imagine. And you went through that yourself. But the story that I'm telling myself is I'm going to prioritize myself. I'm going to prioritize my health first. I'm going to work incredibly hard on actually recovery every single day. Like I sleep for as long as I need to sleep for. Like there's no compromise on that, right? And I use vocabulary, which you just used there as well, where like things are a challenge. They're not an issue. There's weight, but there's no stress. And sure, that's a little bit of self-delusion, but you need to be honest with yourself, but you also need a level of self-delusion in life if you want to do stuff that's outside of your comfort zone, because you need to convince your mind first before you convince your body. And I feel like you've definitely run that race many times and, got a lot of wisdom around it.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I think the best thing you can ever do is learn how to trick your mind into doing what you want it to do. Like that's the most valuable skill you can do. So whatever language or, techniques help you do that, the more you should leverage them. Like I definitely am really careful of language because your brain is listening and you'll manifest the things that you say. So even busy is a word I use by default, but I've been trying not to, because the more you sort of use it, the more you have a busy brain, and then you're like, oh, I'm so busy, and it becomes all really overwhelming. And the same thing with, I think I mentioned before that I call burnout hypocritical. Because of all the things that I would not want to do, it would be to be hypocritical about my message. And that's the only way to make me take it seriously enough. Because otherwise, if I don't word it in a way that gets the message in, I'll just keep doing it because I'm like, oh, no one will know, it's fine. And there's no incentive for me to stop doing that because I'm like, no, this is actually working hard. It's actually dedication. But as soon as it's hypocritical, I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. So you need to know your own triggers and work around them.
So true. Well, speaking of vocabulary, we're into our next segment, our favorite segment of every podcast. It was described in the vocabulary of the word foot earlier, which is fair enough. I'm just looking for it at the moment. Here it is up there. So we do Spirulina Shots, and it is a fun segment because for those who are listening on for the first time, I describe it as tasting like creek, and when you add water to it, it tastes like creek water. But hey, foot is kind of close. Now that's the downside. The upside of spirulina is it's one of the most powerful nutrient-dense superfoods on the planet. A little goes a long way. So if you are using this, put a little bit of creek or foot in your smoothie so you disguise the taste. Pro tip, I have matcha every single day. Whether you get it from Matcha Maiden, which is incredibly good matcha, or whether you get it from Tropeaka, which is incredibly good matcha, have that in the morning. Fantastic. Put some MCT oil in it or something like that. I put some immunity in it as well. But then if you're going to have a smoothie later in the day, chuck some foot in there as well. You don't need much, just a little bit. And we're taking it a step further, though, in Spirulina Shots, where, Brooke, I can't even do that. I'm not flexible enough. I'm just putting the pouch behind me on the wall for those that are listening via audio. But we're doing Spirulina Shots, which is we've got 4 questions that were prepared for Sarah off her Instagram prior to this segment running, and we're going to ask you questions. If you get the questions correct, Sarah, then we have to do the Spirulina Shot, and if you get them wrong, you have to do the Spirulina Shot. While Brooke is up getting the Spirulina Shots, I want to remind people, please subscribe to this podcast. We'd really, really appreciate it. We have amazing guests. We've had a run of 14 amazing guests. Episode 14. Actually, Niall's on one of those episodes, so 13 amazing guests.
Stop. You're an amazing guest.
Oh, please. I was just fishing for compliments. Goodness me. I'm dreadful. I'm dreadful. But yeah, subscribe to the podcast, please. Obviously, this is run by Tropeaka, so we're also on all of the social media channels at Tropeaka, Tropeaka. It's a combination of tropical and peak performance with an A on the end. Sarah, will promo you at the end again, but I always like reminding people twice. So where can people find you on social media and your podcast?
Good one. Spoonful of Sarah is where everything lives, but Seize the A has its own Instagram page as well, and the podcast and book are both called Seize the A, so that's super easy.
Amazing. We're going to remind you. Do you know that Austin Powers movie where he's got to say, Austin has to say 3 times to the guy that wants to kill him or something? I don't know. Have you seen that?
I've got no idea. I haven't seen that movie.
No.
Have you seen it? Oh, God.
You're on your own on this one, Caleb.
I'm old. Anyway, I feel like that where you remind people, we're not going to do it 3 times, but we'll remind you 2 times. Also, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts if you are feeling extra generous. We do truly, truly appreciate it, and it helps us with getting the word out there with our amazing guests. So we are into Spirulina Shots today. Brooke, are you going to do the first question?
Yeah, I'll take away the first question.
Awesome. Here are our Spirulina Shots. We've got them ready. Do you have yours ready, Sarah?
I do.
Okay, nice. We're going to show them up to the camera.
Ooh.
Oh, nice. All righty.
Alrighty,
I've got
we'll
4
get it
here.
going. Oh my gosh, you might be doing all 4.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
And we'll see if Caleb actually ends up doing one this time round, because I feel like Caleb always gets away with not doing one.
I'm on a winning streak.
Oh, no. I should have made them less strong. They're really green.
Was your ratio 1 to 3? Because that's our ratio. 1 to 2, 1 to 3.
Oh, well, so I watched your last one, the example you sent me where you were like, it's half-half.
Yeah. Look, it's
So
somewhere
they're really
between 1,
strong.
3 and half. That's good. What are ours on today? You did ours, Brooke.
Oh gosh,
They're about
I
half?
literally did like the amount of water in here, and then I want to say like 2 full tablespoons of spirulina.
In 4 shot glasses.
Maybe there's
That's
more
like
water.
that's a ratio of 1 to 1.
Okay,
no, wait.
maybe there was
I'm
some
bad
more
at
water.
maths. Let's do this. Give 80% spirulina, 20% water. All right.
There's a lot in there.
All right,
in
this is
summary.
going to suck for us as well. Don't worry, Sarah.
Alrighty, we'll get into your first Instagram post. So it is a photo from November 2016, 2020. You're in a brown jumper and you're with someone. You both have headphones on. Who are you with in the photo?
Wait, did you say 2016 or 2020?
November 16th, 2020.
Oh, I'm in a brown jumper.
You're in a brown jumper, you're with someone, and you both have headphones on. Who are you with?
My dog, Paul.
Yes, she got it right.
I thought that someone would throw you off. Brooke, 1-0.
No, it was the headphones.
That is the most classic dog name I've ever heard. Like Paul the dog. That's just amazing.
How'd you come up with Paul?
A combination of what would sound the weirdest at the park, because,
Yeah.
let's just be different and weird. And our favourite bakery in Paris is Paul Bakery, and we just, I don't know, decided wouldn't that... Oh, no, and there was an episode of Family Guy that we were watching while we were there that was like, my cat's name's Paul. And the guy was like, oh, why would you call a cat Paul? What a silly name for a cat. And we'd just been at the bakery and we were like, if we ever get an animal together, it'd be called Paul. And then we got a dog. So we called him Paul.
That's cool. Can you do something? I'm not sure if you've done it before, but go to the dog park with your husband, position Paul in front of your husband, and then say, Paul, sit. And then just get your husband to sit and see what everyone does.
People
good.
always think I'm yelling at Nick. I'll be like,
Yeah.
Paul! And they're like, oh my God, people are having a domestic over there.
Lay down. Oh, you like to be tickled under the chin. Oh, Paul.
Good boy.
Good boy. Oh, so good. All righty. Brooke is 1-0 down. So, question 2. And by the way, those listening via audio, you can watch the full video clip of this on YouTube or on our Instagram. We'll pop it up and it'll showcase the image. So, question 2. A photo from January 30th this year. You are in a beige top and skirt with a drink in your hand, leaning on a railing. Where are you?
A railing?
Yes.
I think we might have her on this one.
Winning
Oh my
streak continues.
God. Beige top and skirt. Oh, am I at Willow? Urban
no,
Retreat?
unless Willow is a boat, a name for a boat. But you're on a boat.
Oh, yep.
Come
Yep.
on.
Yes, I don't have to do one.
Winning streak continues.
So wait, what?
Yeah, you're on.
so
You're
wait.
on a railing.
You're leaning on a
No.
railing
I
on
mean,
the
wait.
boat.
So what, do I need to drink
Oh
one?
yeah, but we'll do it. We'll do it
them at
all
the
together
end.
at the end. It's a communal.
Okay,
Shots are
okay.
communal. You gotta.
Okay.
Alrighty, we'll jump into the third one. I hope that I don't have to do two. All right. It's a reel from August 9th, 2020. You're doing an activity with two other people. What is it? I'll give you a hint. Music is involved in the activity.
August. Oh no. Were we in lockdown then?
I think so.
Melbourne was pretty much in lockdown forever, right?
A year.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I can't even remember. So if I was in lockdown, I wouldn't have been. Who would I have been with?
Maybe you weren't in lockdown then.
She doesn't
I don't know.
give up? Do you give up? Okay, you were learning how to do salsa dancing. And you were with your husband and he like dropped you on the floor.
For our wedding. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was our wedding dance lessons. Oh my gosh.
It was salsa dancing,
Yep,
right?
okay.
I swear I read salsa
Yeah.
dancing. Okay.
Yeah.
You didn't forget the salsa moves. You just forgotten the Instagram post. I hope, right? How did your
Yeah.
wedding dance go?
Yeah, no, do you know what it was though? It was because it was last year. We were in lockdown, so all I was posting were throwbacks because obviously I had nothing else to post because that was from a year before.
Yes.
But I must have like reposted.
That's what got you. Sneaky.
That was the funniest video. Your partner just dropped you on the floor. I was like, that is just classic.
Alrighty.
Yeah, he didn't drop me on the day, thank God.
Oh, that's good.
Oh.
That's good.
That's the main thing. Okay, number 4. So this is to tie it up if you get this correct. So it's a photo from February 12th this year. So the most recent photo of all 4. You are holding a coffee cup out in front of a very aesthetic background. What is the quote on the cup?
Oh, see, that's unfair because I've got about 5 of those.
Kind of a photo of the cup
Okay.
like this.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to help you
So
because
it's-
I like spirulina in a weird way. The first word on the coffee cup is baby.
Baby steps still take you in the right direction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she
well
got
done.
it.
That was a sympathy answer. Sympathy.
I would feel
Clue.
so bad if Sarah was doing 3 shots and I was just over here doing 1.
No, it's because I went through a phase where I did like 5 different coffee cups holding in exactly the same way but against different backgrounds with different quotes. And they were all like January, February. So I'm like, which one is it?
What was it?
It's a good quote, actually. It's very, very true. Never. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, as they say.
Alrighty.
So
All right,
does that
you
mean
wanna film this for
you guys
Instagram?
do?
Yeah? Do you reckon we should?
One sec. We'll film it for Instagram. The issue with Instagram stories is like they can't hear. They
Yeah,
can't
I
hear
reckon
Sarah.
we just do one at the end when we're done.
then
they can
let's do
watch
it
it.
and we'll decide later.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
I'm just going to stir mine because they're kind of like gone a bit thick and slushy.
Ours are fresh. You can actually tell us what you think of our spirulina because, funnily enough, we have one of the cleanest spirulinas on the planet. So hopefully, it's not as footy as what you've tried in the past.
You can tell my facial expression will tell all.
Exactly.
Okay. Hello, everyone. We're filming a podcast right now with the incredible Spoonful of Sarah, and we're about to do our Spirulina Shots segment. It's 2 to Team Tropeaka and 2 to Sarah as well. All right, ready? Let's go. 3, 2, 1. Ooh, ew.
The best thing about it is I can literally spill this all over my shirt and no one will even know.
Okay, I have to do mine. Gotta do the tongue out.
Got to do the tongue out. Show us, Sarah.
Mine's like,
Oh, you're pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
you did
good.
clean.
I think I necked that. It went straight down. I was like, straight down the throat.
Did you do 2? I didn't even see you.
No, I've got another one.
Oh, you got another one.
she's
Yeah, you're
got
not getting out of
another
that. All right, here we go.
Oh, wow. There was so much sludge in the bottom of that one.
No.
Right? Wow. Well,
Well, at
I'm
least
going to
you're
be full of antioxidants.
Exactly.
I was actually making a smoothie before this podcast and I was like, oh, should I put some spirulina in it or some greens? And I was like, actually, I'm definitely going to end up doing a spirulina shot. I'll just have my spirulina then.
Just leave it for now. Well, my skin tomorrow will be like, woo.
It'll be glowing.
Exactly. All right, you handled them like a champion, Sarah. Thank you for playing along. That was a lot of fun. All right, into the final questions. Actually, how are we looking?
Good, I think.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. Good stuff. All righty. What is one thing you wish you could say to young Sarah other than to not shot spirulina?
Ooh, okay. Many things. Overall, my answer is nothing because I think if I had changed any decision along the way, I wouldn't be exactly where I am. But a couple of things I think are important. So those strands that we all used to have
Yes.
are not cool. So stop doing that. Equally, the way that I used to dye my hair, also not cool.
What colour did it used to be?
I used to have this big blonde, like bright blonde underneath, like this one big chunk that I thought was really alternative. Like, I don't know, I just thought it was really edgy that it wasn't all through. It was just like this one big chunk. And it was in a phase where that was popular. Like people would just do one big thing of color. And like, I'm Asian. Like, I'm never going to be naturally blonde. So it clearly wasn't that. It was just it just didn't look good. It went orange. Like it was just not a good time. I thought it was really cool at the time. But you know when you look back and you're like, oh.
Why did I do that?
So many things. Like don't roll your skirt. I used to roll my skirt at like my uniform at school.
Yes.
And like just do up
Am
your
I meant to be
T-bars,
taking notes
like-
with all of this, by the way? Like, what do I do here?
There's just so many things that I look back on and cringe that I used to think were so cool but just weren't. But again, like I think that's part of life. If you don't look back at different phases of your life and cringe, like you're not doing it right. So I actually wouldn't change any of those because sometimes I see thank God we didn't have social media though. Sometimes I see an actual photo, like a printed out photo every now and then resurface and I'm like, I'm so glad I grew out of that phase.
I'm so glad I didn't selfie that one onto social media.
Oh my God. Like it's actually, I sometimes shudder thinking if I had actually had Instagram when I was, 13, it would just, there'd be so much evidence. I'm so glad it's all just, MySpace is about as bad as it got and I deleted that a couple of years ago.
I've got an Instagram account out there and it's private and I've forgotten the password, but I posted so much cringy stuff on there and I would die to like be able to see what I put on there and I would literally just cringe as well. It's crazy.
Is it on private or is this for the public to see?
No, it's on private, so I can't even go
okay.
and look myself. So
Oh,
I'm like,
thank
what's
God.
there?
But your followers, people who follow that account, they will be able to see it still.
I know. I've done so much digging and I can't get into it.
So all your ex-boyfriends ready for revenge photos.
No, this is from when I was like literally like 10 to 12 years old.
Okay.
Like I used to do this weird thing where I would Photoshop
You lied
stuff.
to Instagram and said you were over 13.
Don't tell the
Brooke.
CEO of Instagram. No.
Goodness me. I'm telling Mr. Zuckerberg.
Alrighty, let's get back on track. Sarah, you've done so much, you've achieved so much, but what are the future goals that you have for yourself moving forward?
Oh, well, interestingly, this is probably the first year that I don't have as clear an answer for that as I usually would. And I'm not sure whether that's because, actually, I think it's because last year was so humbling and such a reset and obviously wouldn't wish it to be for the reason that it was. And it was tragic in so many ways. But I think one of the silver linings was that everyone who was on that hamster wheel, just going so hard towards goals all the time, realized actually maybe we can slow down and breathe a little bit. And there are some much more important things in life that we hadn't been giving enough time to. So I published the Seize the A book in September last year, but it was stage 4, so bookstores weren't open. So I kind of feel like it really only started to feel real around January. And I realized that even after September having it come out, by December I was already like, okay, what's next? Like, what's my next project? What's 2021 going to be about? And I'd barely even enjoyed the last thing that had come out that I'd spent a year kind of working towards. And that sort of made me think, did I learn nothing from COVID to just straight away jump into like, don't enjoy this success, like let's go jump to the next thing. So I kind of I pulled myself up and thought, it's not even been half a year, let alone a year yet since your last big project. It's okay to just enjoy where you are now and not really know what's going to come next, particularly because the borders have been kind of open and shut and open and shut. I've had a few big ideas. I wanted to do sort of a replacement book launch and do a bit of a tour and then do some recordings again in person interstate like I would have liked to. But again, like that's a little bit up in the air at the moment. So actually I'm just enjoying everything going really well, but not necessarily needing to be different anytime soon. The podcast is going well. I did introduce a more community-based, kind of shorter second episode at the start of this year, which I've loved. It's called Yays of Our Lives. And I noticed that a lot of the people I have the privilege of speaking to also have their own platform or already are kind of quite familiar with telling their story. But there are a lot of people out there in the bits in between who either don't like to tell their own story because they don't think it's as amazing as it is, or they just wouldn't think about, having a platform. And I sort of wanted to get into that grassroots community stuff where last year they really shone through, and I love that kind of storytelling. So that's been amazing. I've done a couple of awesome road trips out into rural areas and met some people I think are heroes. So I've loved that. But as for the next 6 months to the end of the year, maybe start thinking about babies. We actually sold Matcha Maiden at the end of last year in December.
Oh, no way.
So that was a really, that was a really big milestone.
Do you still have the Mylk bar though, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah. And so that was another big chapter shift. And again, I sort of was like, oh, well, what's my next business? Like, what am I doing? And not realizing I actually already have another business that's taking up a lot of time. I don't need a whole brand new thing. So yeah, I'm just marinating, just sitting on what might come next.
She's just seizing her yays,
Lovely.
I'm just seizing my yays. Yeah.
It's awesome. I love it.
I think that's a perfect place to finish. Sarah, you're an absolute legend. Thank you for just bringing so much light and brightness and happiness and also realness to the world. We need more people like that on the planet, and it's been been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. So thank you so much. Can you tell everyone, Sarah, where they can find you? Not only your podcast but your socials. We mentioned it earlier, but let's do it again.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. Spoonful of Sarah is where you can find links to everything else. And Seize the A is on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you find your podcasts. And listen out for Caleb. He will be on in the next couple of weeks.
Can't wait.
So exciting.
Can't wait. And thank you guys. Thank you, Brooke. Let's also remind everyone, Brooke, where they can find us online.
Yeah, so we're on every single social media platform. Whatever it is, we're there. It's just Tropeaka, Tropeaka. Go follow us, subscribe to our YouTube, all of the things.
Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you in episode 15. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Brooke.